Eric St. George here with us for a demo. I have pleasure of meeting him a few years back in our very first shows. I think that was one of our first shows together in Art Gallery.
Yes, yeah.
That's where we met, and we have been following each other since then. Eric is originally from France, and just like many of us in Silicon Valley, we are artists with engineering background.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, he studied engineering, but he has had passion for art from very young age. And even after finishing the engineering, he studied a year of art, but he found out that he need to eat. So he had to go back work as an engineer.
Yeah.
That's the way it is for all of us. And luckily, he got the time to go back to his passion now. In a few years back, he went full time to art. And ever since, he has had many shows in exhibitions and Jewish art shows. He also assistant faculty member at West Valley College, teaching the art, sculpture.
Yeah, I used to be. Now that I moved, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah, you used to, yes, but I'm sure you're gonna find one soon. He has also been a long time art teacher at the Pacific Art League, which I had the pleasure of taking one of his classes there. Unfortunately, I took only one because the traffic commute time was horrible for me.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't stand it. Otherwise, I would have taken more classes. He is very good if you have seen his work in figure drawing and abstract sculpture. And hopefully we get a taste of that tonight on the sculpture part with Clay. And I hand it to Eric now, if he can add anything more he has to say, and then we watch the demo.
Well, thank you, Hadi, for the introduction.
Sure.
Yeah, we met quite a few years ago now.
2016.
Yeah.
2016. I still have the pictures. Have the pictures. I keep seeing it. Yeah.
Okay, so today I'm going to do a little demonstration of a sculpture. I will tell you about it in a few minutes. Before that, I wanted to just for a very quick tour of the studio, so you have an idea of where I work. And then I'll show you the setup that I have, and then I'll do the demonstration. And of course, welcome to interrupt me anytime with any questions, even if they're not directly related to what I'm doing, that's fine. We should just enjoy this time together. So actually, I was lucky because when I moved to Santa Barbara, I found a house where I could have a studio. And so I changed my garage into a workshop, basically. So this is the photos of the workshop. And so here I'm doing all what is related to molds and all what makes dust and all the woodwork and metal work that I need for my sculpture. And I have another room where I can do all my drawings and painting, and I really enjoy that because in Los Gatos I had everything in the same room, so that was kind of difficult. And so a very quick tour here of the studio. So this is the entrance, and then I have some room for let me see that. I have some room for the my drawings and a lot of room here to do paintings on the wall, a few sculptures that I will show you if you're interested. And then that's where I'm going to do the demonstration for you. I have a sink here which is not connected yet, so I have some work to do. Okay. So let me put the camera back on for the demonstration.
Yeah, you set that all up pretty quickly in 1 month.
Yes, I was working hard.
I can see.
Yeah. And so I have a little setup. So I have two cameras here that I'm going to show you two different angles. If you don't see very clearly on one of them, let me know. I can move the camera to make it better for you. Okay. So what I'm going to do as far as the demonstration is concerned, I have a piece here. Typically, I work from a model, but today I don't have a model, and even here I don't know any model yet. So I took an old piece of mine, and that's what I'm going to do here. Before I start, I want to show you. The kind of sculpture I'm doing here, I can show you that here. That's the sculpture that was on the picture. So I like to do this kind of abstract pieces where I really enjoy leaving the mark of the tools and leaving the sculpture very rough like this, and just try to focus on the main gesture of the pose. But today, this one is heavy. It's a bronze, as you can see underneath. It's hollow, but still very heavy. So that's the piece that I'm going to do today. So the way I work here, I made this kind of armature because I don't want a piece of metal in the middle of my piece because I think it's very difficult to work around that. So I made this armature here. And I have here some clay. I'm going to build that here. So need some energy here.
What is the name of that clay, Eric?
This clay is called Red Sculpture. It's from Laguna. It's a clay which has quite a bit of growth. So this is sand and some little pieces of fired clay already. And it has a lot of texture and it holds very well. So I can really like to work with it. It's very nice. And so on this armature, I can make the strengthen the tension on the string, so it's more rigid. And if you're interested, I can show you the armature later. I have some other armature I can show you. So there's two ways to work with clay. One is to build up your sculpture as you go. The other one is the one I'm doing here, is to start from a block and then carve out. I like better to do that because it's much easier for me to give the sense of the gesture of doing that. So that's I'm building this right now. And I have to work the clay so that there is no hole and that all the clay makes a good mass without, if I want to fire it eventually, I don't want it to break. So I'm just making the block here so that I have some volumes to work with. And this is the tool that I use most of the time. So you see, I'm going to do very big movement here. What I'm interested is looking at the gesture. And sometimes when I do that, I feel that I'm painting actually in the clay. So you notice here, there's this shoulder angle, which is very nice. And the whole movement going backward like this. And so that's what I want to focus on. I really want to give this feeling here. I like to work very fast because if I work too slow, I think too much about what I'm doing, and then I lose the spontaneity of the movement. So you see now what I'm doing is removing most of the clay now with my tool. It's like carving.
Does this clay dry quickly or?
Well, depends what you call quickly.
Do you need to spray it a little bit during the work you do?
Typically, not within for half an hour or an hour. I don't need to spray it. Depends if I start with something very wet or very on the edge of being dry. This one, I just prepared it for the demonstration from dry clay. So I use quite a bit of water and it's very moist. So I don't have to worry about that for now.
Okay.
But if I want to work on the piece later, let's say tomorrow, I would have to spray it, put it under a plastic bag, and then
how does working with this clay differs from that gray clay, the other clay?
Well, this one, first, it holds very well. I mean, it doesn't collapse. Some clay will grow, are going to collapse very easily, especially if I make a big piece. So here it's much easier. And the final piece, this is the piece here, is done with the same clay, and it has a nice color after the firing. And also a nice texture. So that's what I like about this clay. So you see, when I'm working with the model, I always move around the model. And here, what I'm doing is I'm moving the piece here that I use as a model, but otherwise I would go around the model all the time. So that's the reason why we use this stance on wheels, so we can move. So it doesn't look like anything for now, but I just want to first give it a sense of movement here. And I'm not going to try to do exactly the same thing. What I want to do is take the idea of the pose and make something which probably a little bit more abstracted. Do you have a good view of what I'm doing?
Yes, yes.
So this clay holds together so well. So along with being subtractive, you could actually, if you decided you wanted to add, you could glom some pieces back on during this time.
Oh, yes, sure. Yes. And I do that all the time.
You may have said this, but it's not just, do you respond to the color as well as the texture? That's such a rich color of clay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I like the color too. The color while I'm working and the final color after firing, both I enjoy very much. Yes, it's very pleasant to work with this display from all point of view.
Is it iron that makes it that red?
Yes, probably some iron oxide. Yes.
Okay.
Typically, that's what makes this red color in the soil or in the stones or.
Yeah, I have to say this demo is worth it already. I've never seen an armature like this. This is brilliant. This string armature. I've never. Is this your own invention? Never seen that. This is really quite inventive.
Yeah, I mean, I needed to find a way to deal with this armature in a way which wouldn't interfere with my work. And also, the other advantage is that I'm also doing some very thin sculpture, like
yeah, I saw some skinny ones. Yes, right.
Yeah, like this one. And when you do a sculpture like this, you cannot keep an armature in there. It's impossible, and it's too thin for an armature inside. And so the only way I found was to use the string armature, because now the strings are not going to make the clay crack when it dries. And also you can work between the strings. So you can have a very strong armature, but still work inside, and you can have a very thin piece.
That's how the engineering background comes into play.
Yes, probably.
Well, I've always had trouble when I try to do something like this, that it just kind of slumps into a big mess, you know, after I got it just how I want it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, this clay is very soft right now, and if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to do that. Every time I would cut in there, it would just collapse and slump. Yes.
So at the end, you just cut the strings, right?
Yes. So at the end, well, I would let it dry for some time, and then when it starts to dry, I would release the tension of the strings and then cut the strings off, and I can remove the strings one after the other, and it just leaves the very tiny holes, and then I can even fill the holes with a little bit of clay like this, or I can just leave the holes, doesn't matter because they're so tiny that, especially given the way I do my work, it doesn't matter if there's a little tiny hole.
Oh, so you don't leave the strings in? You ever just leave the strings inside?
No, because for the firing, I mean, I could because they would just burn, but they don't like to have anything burning in the kilns because that can pollute the air for the other pieces, and so you never know what it can do. So they don't like people to leave anything in their clay when they are fired.
So for this size of your work, how long does it take to dry completely?
A couple of weeks.
Oh.
And so what I do is typically I would let it dry enough so that I can remove it from the string, and then I would take a drill and I would drill some holes like 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch inside the legs, for example, here, so that the thickness of the piece is not too big.
Oh, okay.
Typically, you don't want to fire pieces when they are too thick because they crack more easily. But again, it depends on the type of clay. This one doesn't crack very easily. I did some thin pieces with a different clay, which didn't have any grog, and that clay, if you fire it beyond 1/2 inch, it tends to crack very easily. So. But this one is pretty forgiving. So again, it feels like I'm painting here. And I like to leave the trace of the tool that I use in the clay. I want to give a bit more movement here. So sometimes what I do when I work like this, I want to make it more abstract. I kind of exaggerate some of the feature, like very big hips or very much more twisted than it is in reality. And that's what I think makes it more interesting.
It looks like you like to make headless sculptures. Is there a reason for no heads?
Correct. I don't like to make hands and or feet, and very often I do a very abstract head. And the reason is, if I do a hand, it brings the focus more. It brings the focus out of the gesture. I really like to focus on the movement of the body. And if I make a very nice, very beautiful hand, it's going to bring the focus out of what I'm interested in.
Ah. Cool, thanks.
Oh, welcome. And also, this clay is not very well suited for very fine details. And so when I started, my favorite tool was this knife. And then I decided to make a big sculpture that was 4 or 5 feet high. And then I was struggling and struggling and struggling. And then I realized the reason why I was struggling was because my tool was too small for the size of the sculpture. So I took a big knife, which was larger, wider than this one, and then it resolved the problem. So I like to work with the biggest tools I can, because the smaller the tool, the more you are lost. I tend to be lost in the details, and I don't want that. So I start to see some movement here. I want to increase the movement backward.
Already looking nicer than your model.
Well, yeah, I like it better than my model, actually. And that's what happens very often when I work from the model. I would do a first version, which is kind of realistic, and then I do another version, which is more abstracted, and another one, which is even more abstracted. Because the more I work with the same pose, the more I get a feeling of the gesture that I'm interested in. And then just focus on that. So I want to give it more twist here. I want to feel more the it's here. And the feeling of the arm going forward here. The arm going backward here. And also, I like very often, you mentioned I very often don't do the hands or the feet. Very often what I do is I have the legs going into the ground, into the base. So they disappear. And that's for me a way also to ground my piece. So it's not just floating, it's kind of coming out of the ground. And, so a piece like this, bending backward like this, would completely collapse if it didn't have an armature. How much time do we have, Paddy?
Oh, plenty. You can explain more your process. So we always enjoy how the process goes.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have more questions, don't hesitate. So again, here, when I do that, I don't try to think too much. I really trying to do the big gesture, and sometimes I do a knife cut, and oh, I like it. I don't want to touch it, because if I touch it, I lose all the energy of the stroke.
So Eric, if you do a piece with the hand or leg separated away from the body, do you put armature inside?
No. So what I would do, well, yes and no. So for example, if I wanted to have an arm here, let's assume that. Let's assume I would like to have that. So I could take a piece of string and attach it here like this.
Oh, I see. You hang it.
So I would do something like
You don't
this,
put.
like this here, and I could do something like this. And sometimes I could even put a little bit of armature, like a very thin stick like this. So I would stick it in the arm, but that would be just while I'm working on it, because if I don't do that, it's going to change shape every time I touch it. So I would use something like this. And so I can get something very thin. So in that case, I would probably do the string on the piece of wood here.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Yeah, anyhow. And so I would do that. but I would have to be very careful to remove that as soon as it starts to dry, otherwise it would crack. So I have to be very careful with that. And also, another thing is, if you have this case here, for example, I would have an arm like this. So the arm is touching here and here. And so if I let it dry like this, because this piece is much bigger than this one would dry faster. And because it is attached here and here, it would just crack in the middle because it would shrink like this. So the way to do to avoid this is to wrap this piece in plastic while it's drying, so that it doesn't dry faster than the rest of the piece.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So anyhow, for this one, I don't need an arm. So I can remove that.
So when you do your bronze pieces, do you first do it in clay also or wax?
Okay, so if I do a bronze, for example, of this one, I would let it dry and then I would do a mold.
Oh, I see.
Out of this one. So a mold would be for this one probably two pounds. So I would do I would create a seam in clay all along, and I would do a layer of silicone on one side, and then after that I would do some plaster or some other rigid material that I can hold the silicone, and I would turn it around to the other side. Okay, and then I have my mold. From the mold, I would do a wax. And then after that, from the wax, I can make another shell around the wax, and then I can pour the bronze into the shell. So it's the lost wax process, because every time I do that, I lose my wax. But I still have the initial mold of the piece that I can keep. And so now I'm looking at what I like, what I don't like. Here. So I like there is some movement here. I don't like this shoulder here. Too stiff.
What's your source for this clay?
I go to Clay Planet, and the name of the clay is Red Sculpture. It's from Laguna. Are you doing sculpture too?
No, I'm not, but I love it. And this clay just makes me want to do it. I love it. I love clay. And
yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah, and the color and everything, it's just wonderful.
Well, I think they may have it in Santa Clara, the Clay Planet.
Yes.
Clay Planet, yeah.
Yeah, it's of St. Thomas and 1-1 basically.
Yeah.
So
I think we need to get a box and have a group sculpting event,
That would be so much fun.
wouldn't it?
Yes.
And we could get Sloan to fire them in your kiln.
I may have to pick up some too. My toddler that was here watching for a minute said we need to buy some of that clay because I guess he's tired of his Play-Doh.
Potatoes for chumps.
He's ready for the real thing.
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm going to cut the bit from there, here.
Yeah, very nice, Eric.
So Eric, it looks like you're working from a model that you've done before, but when you don't have a model like you have now, what do you usually work from? Photographs
From
or
life,
sketches or
from life models.
live models?
From life models, yes.
No, if you don't
So
have a
that's-
model, if you don't have a model,
Oh, if I don't have model,
do you do from like taking picture from different side and then do it off the picture?
yeah, I did that. I did a few of these during the pandemic, but I don't like that very much. It's not the same as being in front of a model.
Hmm.
And yeah, I have a show in San Francisco in August, and I did 16 pieces for that show. So it's a show where it's in San Francisco. It's at the Art Gallery, and every year they have this show where they have 16 artists, and each artist is showing 16 pieces. So I did 16 pieces for that show, and because it was the pandemic, I didn't have a model. So a few I worked from photos, a few other ones I worked from imagination. So for example, the piece which is there, the blue one, that was from imagination. But this one here was from a model. And the same thing here, that was a piece where I really exaggerated the movement and the twisting of the pose. So back to
Yeah,
here.
one time I made a piece. I put the camera and I took picture of myself from different size, 6 different angles.
Ah,
Then I made it.
so the only advantage of working from a photo is when you want to do a very dynamic pose. Because of course a model cannot hold a very dynamic pose for a long time. But on the other hand, if I work with a model and the model is just for me, then I can ask the model to hold the pose for 1 minute. I can work for 1 minute and then she can relax for another few minutes and then take the pose again. And it doesn't matter if it's not exactly the same pose, as long as I get the gesture, and that's how I would do for a very dynamic pose. But you cannot do that with a group of people. That doesn't work.
Right.
So I don't know that much about clay. I'm looking at this website actually right now, this Clay Planet. But this particular clay, what would happen if you never fired it? Would it just crumble at some point, or?
If you don't touch it, no, it would stay like this. It can stay like this for a long time. Now, if it gets humid, it will absorb the humidity. But it can dry again. But it's very fragile. I mean, and it depends on the shape. I mean, the shape like here is okay. You can keep it for a long time. If it has arms sticking out, then
Yeah.
it's very likely that they're going to break.
Uh-huh.
But one way to do, if you don't want to fire a piece, is to epoxy the piece. So you take some epoxy and you make it a very liquid, and so you brush the clay, and the clay is going to absorb the epoxy,
Mhm.
and it can be pretty hard like this. So I have a few pieces that I did maybe 20 years ago, and I just did the epoxy thing. But of course, I broke the feet during my various moves from where, because I was in New York at the time, and I moved to California, to Hawaii, back to California, and back here. So some of these pieces, they got broken, but you can get the clay much harder than without firing it if you do that.
You can take your piece to, yeah, you can take your piece to Clay Planet and they fire it for you.
Yes, that's
For
what
a
I
small,
did. But
for a small fee, yeah.
yes, yes. And typically what I do is I go to Clay Planet, I rent the whole kiln, because I typically have 15 or 20 pieces, and it's not that expensive. I mean,
No, it's
it's
very
very
cheap.
affordable.
Yeah.
Okay, I think for this one, I'm almost done. I don't want to try to get it to do more work, otherwise I'm going to lose what I have here.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you can just give us more education on a sculpture for another 10
Sorry?
minutes. So yeah, just give us more education on the sculpture. More information.
What do you mean?
And education on different type of materials you have used before and the differences.
Okay, so I don't know what to say at that point. So really, for me, the breakthrough was this armature here, which allowed me to work much more easily on big pieces or very thin pieces, and not worrying about the piece cracking around the armature. So, and as you see, I work pretty fast, and if I continue to work on that piece, I'm going to lose what it has.
Yeah.
If I'm not happy with the piece, I'd rather start again with another piece.
That makes sense.
Yes, start from scratch and do another piece. And the clay, you can reuse it as much as you want. So, for example, this clay, I had it dry for months actually, because before I moved, I broke all my old pieces that I didn't want to keep, and then I break them into small pieces, put them in a bucket, put some water, and then a few days later, I can work again with the clay.
Oh.
Is the armature, is that something that you built or something that you purchased?
No, I came up with the idea, so I wouldn't be able to purchase it anywhere. Let me show you how that works.
You
so
need to market
here,
it. Yeah.
Sorry?
You need to market it. Yeah, seriously.
Right? You want to do the marketing for me?
That's much harder than doing art.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Everybody has his own skills or qualifications. So I'm going to show you the armature.
I really like this.
So this is the armature. I'm going to show you that a bit. Yeah. So you have this which slides up and down. And I have this board here, and there's some holes in the board. And so what I do is I put some strings starting from the bottom of the board, and I go around a couple of times, or depending on how big my piece is. And so I have my string here, I have 2 knots here, but it's only 1 string, so that when I do the tension is going to be the same on all the legs of the strings, basically. And I have holes in my board here. So once I have the strings around, I can bring my board I guess this is not the board which matches this specific armature. So anyhow, you get the idea here. I have many of these, so sometimes I don't keep track of what board goes with what armature. But when I have my strings here, after that I can increase the tension by just turning these nuts here, so that pulls that up. And then it creates an armature. Like this. And I can play music here. And so basically that's it. And you can find all the parts at Home Depot at the plumbing department. So it's pretty straightforward to make.
Is that a plastic string you use?
No, it's
fabric.
It's the mason. It's the string that masons use.
Masonaries.
Yes. Yeah. You find that at the Home Depot, and you buy that in rolls like this here.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it. If you're really interested, if you really want that, I have a document which describes how to make one of these. So just let me know.
I would like that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you sent the document to Hadi, we could have it for whoever wanted it. If we request for it, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give it to everybody for a couple dollars each.
If you don't mind sending it, because this is wonderful.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I mean, I'm not in the business of armature. I'm in business of art. So
okay.
And I don't like to call that a business anyhow. So I don't know. Do you have other questions? Do you want me to show you something else?
Unless if you have any other tools, you can share the type of tools you use, or just the spatula is their main tool.
Okay, so when people are working with clay, a lot of people are going to tell you, okay, you need this kind. Sorry.
Your camera is off a little bit.
Yes, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. There you are. So
yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people are going to tell you, okay, you have to use this and you have to use this. And then they will tell you, oh, yeah, you need all these little tiny tools here to make all the details. And
I have all those.
yes. And actually, I mean, if you do ceramics and pottery, then you might use these tools, especially if you work on the wheel. That can be useful sometimes, and I'll show you in what cases. If I want to remove some clay here, this makes it very easy to remove, right? When it's a little bit easier than with the knife. But beside that, that's the only case where I use that. Otherwise, I don't like to work in small details like this. That's not my style. But so, depending on what you want to do, if you want to do something very realistic or with very fine details, you need these. You need yeah, sometimes I do smaller pieces, and when I do the head, then I need a little bit smaller tool, so I use something like this. But it's very rare. Most of the time, I like to work with the knife. That keeps the abstract. I like to keep the piece abstract, right? So if I work with a tool which is too small, I lose that.
Yeah, I think all the small tools are good if you're doing realistic.
Yes.
Realistic.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So what you want to do though is use this. And this is to cut the clay. And sometimes what I do is I would do some cut right with this, right, like this. And I can do very rough cut like this very easily, even more easily than with the knife, because that doesn't stick to the clay. And so sometimes, especially when I work with a bigger piece, I would do I would start with the cut with the wire. And at the beginning, I was cutting the clay. I was cutting that with the wire. Also, can you see? Yeah. So you see, I started with a lot of clay. That's all the clay that I removed from my piece. Okay, so basically I removed more clay than what I left in the piece. But when you have the clay like this, you cannot work with that. So what I do is, yeah, you can see me on the other video here. I work it like this. So I want to make sure that it's very dense and that there's no holes in the clay. And so now I can work from a block like this, because it doesn't have any more holes in there.
Okay.
I have sort of a random question.
Yeah, sure.
I see a couple of speakers mounted in your studio. Just wondering if you always listen to music and what kind, what type of music?
Yes, that's the. Let's see. So this is the first thing I set up in my studio. That I did the same thing when I was in Los Gatos. Is set up the speaker so I can listen to music. Yeah. And I always listen to music when I work. I like all kind of music. I like very much the classical music. I like music from Hawaii. I like flamenco music. I like opera also.
No rap?
Not that much. I like better something which is pretty quiet, but even though flamenco is not very quiet. But I play the guitar also, and I learned flamenco. I learned Hawaiian music from when I was in Hawaii. So I like this kind of music.
Nice. Thanks. Just curious. So.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
I don't know, any other questions?
No, that was a fantastic demonstration. Thank you.
Very, very nice.
Nice to
Very
see.
nice.
And yeah, if you have any questions, send them to me by email, whatever. I try to answer these. Haley, remind me to send you the document.
Sure.
It was thoroughly, that was just so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you're very welcome.
That was great.
We'll make the video available for all those poor sacks that didn't make it.
Okay, so yeah, let me send me the link. Before I finish, it is important to protect your clay when you leave. Let me find what I put here. I had some plastic bags somewhere, but anyhow, this is another piece I have been working on. But you see, if I want to keep it, I want to protect it with a plastic bag at the beginning, and if I want to let it dry, I want to let it dry slowly. So for a few days, I will put a plastic bag with a hole, but I don't want to let it dry too fast. But if you put it in a plastic bag and it's very well sealed, you can work. You can keep it for weeks. It doesn't matter. It's going to remain like this.
So if you want to work on it again, you don't make no holes in it. You keep it moist.
Yes, if you want to work on it, you keep it moist. If you want to let it dry, you put a plastic, but you leave some holes at the beginning so that it dries slowly.
You don't put like
and the small part of your piece, you want to wrap them completely in plastic so that even when you remove the big plastic, you keep these small parts drying slowly.
I've seen people put like a wet cloth over it. You don't need to do that?
No. People used to do that before they had plastic.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at Giacometti, photos of Giacometti, he has all these, or videos, you had all these wet clothes that you put around the clay. But if you put a plastic, you don't need to do that.
Oh, good.
The plastic is going to keep the moisture in there. And so you don't need that at all.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. That was a pleasure.
Sure. Same here.
Okay.
So good. Thank you.